Hello everyone, this is Pippin Williamson with Pippin's Pages and Pippin'sPlugins.com, and in this tutorial I want to show you how to work with the new Contextual Help tab in WordPress 3.3. You may have seen my previous tutorial that you can see right here for modifying the Contextual Help tab in WordPress admin pages, and this is the Help tab that you see up here. This is on the User Bookmarks plugin, and we had this Help tab that we could use right here to display helpful information for our plugin, and it was really useful. Well, that's actually changed in WordPress 3.3 and is actually not backwards compatible anymore. So if you used this in a plugin prior to WordPress 3.3, it won't actually show up if you're using 3.3. So what we have now instead is this help button right here. We can see this is the beta 3.3 running, and there is a new help button right here that actually pulls down, and you have multiple sections inside of that help page. If we go to the WordPress dashboard, for example, we see this help page, and now we have our screen options, navigation, layout, content, etc. So anyway, if you have a plugin such as User Bookmarks that's using this help tab, and you upgrade to 3.3, it will not automatically show up in here. So what I want to show you is how to actually add tabs like this to the help menu. This can be for plugins, themes, whichever. It doesn't matter. It works the same way in both. So what I'm going to show you how to do is write this custom plugin that I've set up. I've just set up a sample help tabs plugin, and it has this help menu with 3 tabs using the plugin settings, and then custom CSS. So anyway, so I'm going to go line by line and show you exactly how to do this. So the first thing that we need to do is open up our plugin and just add in the normal plugin header information that you would add. And then we're going to use a couple of functions. The first thing we're going to do is we're actually going to add in an options page. So we're going to call this Pippin_admin add page. And remember, always prefix your functions. In this case, I'm just using my name. And now we're going to set up a couple global variables. The first one is actually going to be a global variable that we're going to define that is going to hold the ID and URL, etc. for our options page. Then we're going to take this same global and we're going to set it equal to using the add options page function. If you're not familiar with this function, this is actually the same thing as add settings, add submenu page, and it's just going to allow us to add a submenu page to the settings page right here. So what we're adding is we're going to add this help tab page right here. So we're just going to use the add options page. Then we're going to pass the name of the page, sample help tabs, and this is just this function right here, the double underscore and then Pippin, is simply for localization. If you're not familiar with localization, take a look at the tutorial that I have. It describes it pretty in depth. And then the next, so that's our menu title, and now it's going to be our page title. So this is almost identical to the add submenu page function. Then our next parameter is the capability. So we're going to pass manage options, so that just means that only administrators can actually access this page. And then we're going to have our the page slug, which is just going to be options test. And then the last thing we need is the callback function. So it should, as I said before, it should look almost identical to the add submenu page function, except the only difference is that we don't actually pass the general-options.php to the function, because this is automatically adding it to the settings page. Okay, so now what we need to do is actually create our function, Pippin_options page, and this is the function that's going to actually render the content of this page. And now, just to make this easy, I'm just going to do a copy and paste really quickly. Okay, so all I'm doing here is simply outputting some regular HTML just to say, hey, this is the settings page, etc., and I'm doing it inside of an output buffer. The output buffer is really cool because it allows us to type out our HTML as normal, like I've done here, without having to worry about putting it all on the strings and echoing it. So if we actually go into our settings page now, Oops, one last thing. So you'll see our settings page isn't there. That's because I need to pass in, I need to use our admin menu hook, just like this. So it's add action, admin menu, and then the name of our function that actually loads the admin page, just like that. So now if I go and refresh my settings, I don't see it activated. Let's see, what did I do? Maybe my plugin isn't active anymore. Okay, there's the issue. I just figured it out. It's actually, I typed in a double S in manage options, so it's just kind of freaking out there. So if I fix that and now replace it, now you can see sample help tabs is loaded. So this is our HTML content that we defined in this function. So you can see sample help tab. This is our settings page content. And it displays right here. So now what we want to do is we want to create a function that actually displays our help tabs up here instead of the default help tab. So that's actually pretty simple. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to write a new function, and we're going to name it Pippin underscore plugin help tabs. And now we're going to call the global variable that we had up here. This is going to allow us to retrieve all of the information for that options page that we added. And now we're going to set up another variable called screen, and it's going to be get underscore current underscore screen. And that actually allows us to retrieve the information for the page that we're on. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to only load these help pages if the ID of our screen is equal to the ID of our options page up here. And the way that we do that is like this. If screen ID is not equal to our global variable up here, return. So that just means that if we're on it, if we're not on a page that we want to be on, so if we're not on our custom options page, which is here, we're just going to exit out of this function. Otherwise, we're going to continue on and do this. We have a new function called add help tab, and so all we're doing is we're saying basically on our screen, add a new help tab, and then we're going to pass an array to it as the parameter. And now this is going to take a couple things. First, it's going to take a unique ID, and this is going to be the ID of this particular tab. So I'm just going to call this usage. Then we have the title of our tab. This is what's going to show up over here where it says screen info. And once again, I'm going to localize this. And then we have a parameter that says, that defines the content of this page, this tab. So this is the tab content, just like that. Okay, that's it. Now what we need to do is we need to actually, you'll see that if we refresh the page, it's not actually going to make any difference. So now what we need to do is basically load this function inside of our options page. In order to do that, we have a really cool function that we're actually going to add in here. It's an action hook, and so it's going to be add action load dash our global parameter. Oops, our global parameter like this. Oops, I need a double quote over here. And then it's going to be the name of our function right here is going to be our callback, just like that. So what this basically says is that on this page, go ahead and load and perform all the functions, all of the tasks inside of this function. So now if we load our page, we see we now have a new function, a new help tab called using the plugin. And this is our tab content, as you can see defined here. Okay, so now if we want, we can actually go ahead and let's just duplicate this to add a couple new tabs in. And let's call one settings and the other one CSS. So this is going to be plugin Settings, and Custom CSS, like that. Now we refresh, and we have all three of these help tab sections. Okay, and if we wanted, we could now pass the content of each tab to this content parameter. Okay, now one last thing I want to do and show you is just kind of a way that we could actually make it really easy to define the content in here. If we wanted, we could pass in a whole big long string to this, but it would be really messy. We could also define variables up here that have the contents of this. What I'm going to do instead is I'm going to actually set up another function that's going to render our help tab content. So the way I'm going to do that is write this function right here, pippin help tab underscore content, and I'm going to set up a parameter called tab, and we're going to set it to the default tab, which is going to be pippin usage, just like that. Okay, and now what I'm basically going to do is pass this function to each of these parameters, like this. And then all I have to do is this. Just like that. Okay, so now we're actually going to do this for each of the tabs. And we're going to pass the tab ID as the parameter to the function. So basically now what we're going to do inside of this function is simply do conditionals that say if the tab is this ID, display this content. Otherwise, display this content. And because this is kind of long, I'm actually just going to copy and paste this. And now I'm going to explain it. Okay, so what we're doing is we're basically saying in this first one, if the tab, which is what we set up here or up here, is equal to pippin usage, then display this content. And you notice that I'm setting up an output buffer, and then I'm returning the contents of that output buffer at the end. Else, if the tab is equal to this, display this content, else display this content. So it allows us to very easily just set up the content for each tab without making our function up here really messy. So if we go ahead and refresh our page, now we see we have this nice tab with all of our content in here, plugin settings, custom CSS, and using the plugin. So that's how you're going to modify and add content to the help menu in WordPress 3.3. It's a little bit different than in previous versions, 3.21 and earlier. The main thing you should note is that the help tabs are not backwards compatible. So in the next couple months or so, or even the next year, while 3.3 is still relatively new and there are a lot of people who are not upgrading, if you are using the help tab in 3.2 for your plugins, here's what I advise you to do. First of all, go ahead and add a new help tab for people who are using WordPress 3.3. Also, keep the old help tab for people who are using 3.2 in order to make it backwards compatible. And then what you have to do is simply do a version check and say, okay, if you are running WordPress version 3.2.1 or earlier, display this help tab. Otherwise, load in the new help tab because they're not backwards compatible. It's kind of annoying. I wish there was a really good way that they were backwards compatible, but up until now, there's not. So you have to do it yourself. Unfortunately, that means kind of some duplicate content, but we'll make the best of both worlds and help everybody who's upgrading a little slower for the time being. Maybe here in a couple months we completely phase out the old help tab and just use the new one. But in the meantime, you should be sure that you support both users using old and new. So anyway, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and have a great day.